everyone. I just wanted to introduce you to Christopher Pepper and Joanna Schroeder. They're the authors or of the book, I'm sorry, Are the Boys Okay? And they're kind of like diving into what's happening boys to boys right now. And they give us tips into how to basically raise self-aware, kind, and emotionally intelligent kids. And as the mom of two boys, I have found this book very, very helpful, even though my boys are still very young. But it's definitely a conversation that I have never really been open to until obviously I ended up having sons because I didn't realize the severity of what was happening, especially in America around masculinity, right? So I wanted to start by asking you guys, like, what made you write this book?
After years of writing about girls and then realizing that there were challenges facing boys and having two boys of my own, I realized we need to get parents talking about and thinking about what's going on with boys. And Christopher has been working with boys as an educator and in boys groups, and he can add some details into some of the specifics, but he saw that boys were struggling as well. And we just knew that parents needed a resource, a book that had tools and tips and tricks and illuminated all of the struggles that boys are having all in one.
I feel like you work, especially you, Christopher, you work very closely with like families and like kids, kind of like at interesting different ages. What are you seeing in boys today?
Well, yeah, I work in schools, and one of the projects I've worked on for the last 12 years is coordinating these boys groups that Joanna referenced. And the groups were originally designed around sexual health and HIV prevention, so that was kind of the focus. But what we quickly learned when we got boys in a room with a facilitator, who is usually a social worker or a counselor, um, was that they were really looking for a space to connect with one another, to kind of talk about their lives. And when we got to these questions around what does it mean to you to be a man, or what do you think is a successful man, or what kind of pressures have you had around being a boy, they said, wow, nobody's ever asked me that. I really would love to talk about that. And kind of contrary to the stereotype of boys being kind of quiet or silent. They just kept talking and talking. And it really showed me like we're not giving boys space to connect with one another, to really be real with their emotions and to have deeper, richer conversations. And they really benefit from having those.
Yeah.
It was sort of missing something that I noticed was missing from the lives of a lot of boys.
Parents don't expect to have to connect with boys emotionally, especially as they get older. Like when you have your little toddler, you know what to do because you kind of do the same thing with boys and girls. But as they get older, we think, oh, well, they don't need all that connection. They don't need all those cuddles. They don't need all that love. They don't need to talk about their feelings. And we were just so wrong for so many generations. And we see it now. We know that the death by suicide rate is skyrocketing. We know that addiction rates are skyrocketing. We know that boys are in trouble. They're not going to college as often as they used to, but they're also not finding an alternative path to a great, fulfilling career because not everyone has to go to college. And we have to start when they're little, like you are with your boys, Victoria, like really engaging them when they're tiny and staying connected as they get older.
Yeah. What do you think the biggest misconception has been after like working with the boys, the willingness to be open, or is there something else you kind of incorporate into conversations?
Yeah, I do think the idea that boys don't want to talk about their feelings or that boys don't have deep feelings. Um, and, I do a lot of relationship education and sex education kind of work. And often I'm working with boys when they have their first relationship. So that's sometimes something that'll come up in a group. And they'll come in and talk about falling in love, but they'll sometimes talk about heartbreak.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, I think a lot of boys get very invested in those early relationships and don't have a lot of guidance around how to manage those, what it feels like to fall in love, how the emotions that can come up when someone first has a physical connection with someone else. It might not be sex, it might just be kissing and, holding hands and being close with someone else. But that can bring up a lot of feelings for people. And then when they break up, the advice that boys often get, really is not very good. It's often like, oh, you forget about her, she's not important. Sometimes really cutting down the girl if they were involved with the girl, cutting her down and saying like saying disparaging things about her, and not giving much comfort to the feelings that they might have, which can be devastating. And just people being like, "Oh, get over it. There's lots other fish in the sea," and not really acknowledging that they might be hurting for a while.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about I was lucky enough that when I had my first heartbreak, my mom like got the ice cream and sat down with me and we talked and she let me just veg out on the couch with her and we may have gone shopping. I don't know. We did the things I like to do because she felt so sad for me. But we don't do that with boys. Instead, it's a lot of like, find another girl or like that B word and like really disparaging her. And they're not healing because of that. They're just having these wounds that never heal.
I know it's so crazy. So I was born and raised in Peru, and still in my generation, there were parents that would send. As a woman, you were supposed to be a virgin until you got married, of course, and that was very much ingrained in you. And as a boy, they would often buy prostitutes for their sons in order to like just practice before they even like had sexual relationships before even being in a relationship, so they wouldn't get so attached. And the amount of trauma that can be
Yes.
like in a young boy, it's just so insane.
Well, and if you think about everybody's ready for a sexual relationship at a different point. And for a lot of people, waiting until marriage works, right? That's a good framework. But for lots of people, 18 or 20 or whatever might be the right age. But some people aren't ready. Some people aren't ready in high school. Even boys, we just have such a myth around the fact that every guy is going to enjoy every sexual experience. And the guys feel weird and ashamed sometimes if they don't meet that expectation. But we all develop at different times. I can't imagine anything more traumatic. That's so sad for those boys.
No, it's so frustrating. I have this idea or like this belief better than an idea that things, especially big projects, kind of choose you. And there's a magical moment where you're like, I really feel this urge to like do this project. Was there like an aha moment for you both where you're like, okay, this really needs to come? Did something happen?
It's funny because I work in digital publishing. So I work at a magazine called Your Tango, and it's like love and relationship and zodiac and Chinese astrology and like fun stuff like that, right? And what I learned was people read articles that are helpful, that give them tools. And every time I would talk to one of my friends who was also raising boys, they'd be like, but what exactly do I say? Like, what do I say when he asks about sex? And I thought, why are there no books that are tools? Like we make thousands of articles every year that are tools and tips and lists, but there's no book that's like, here's how to talk about when he sees porn. I can't tell you how many people came to me and said, what do I do when my kid sees porn online? Or my kid's up, what should I say next? And asked me, and I was like, oh my God, these people need tools. And I just knew exactly what this book needed to be. I just knew also that there wasn't a lot. I needed someone who knew more about what was going on with boys and men. And thank goodness I met Christopher. And I was like, this is it. This is it. And it's so funny. It's so modern. I DM'd him on Twitter. We hadn't met. And I was like, are you by chance a writer? He's like, I'm actually a journalist originally. And I was like some weirdo woman sliding into your DMs to be like, do you want to write a book with me? Like, this seemed totally insane. But he said yes, he did want to.
Joanna's being humble. She was really writing about boys in a way that got people's attention, and wrote this great New York Times story that everyone I know read about boys finding extremism online through memes and jokes, and that was something that resonated because I think this was in 2019 that story was published, so it was quite a while ago at this point, and people weren't paying attention to that, but I was seeing it in classrooms and schools, and I was also doing this work with boys groups in our schools locally, but also trying to connect with other people who are doing that work and realizing like, oh, there's pockets of people doing work with boys and it's sort of around social emotional growth, but there's no real built out network. And that's something that I'm really interested in. Like, I think there should be boys groups in every
Mhm.
school, and it's something that I would love to, that I talk about when I'm doing interviews like this. And often I'll hear from people afterwards, like, "Oh, I think we could start a boys group at our school. Do you have a guidebook to help us?" and things like that. And people are looking for. They sort of realize that it's a need, and they're looking for advice about how to do it.
Yeah, I started talking about what was happening online before there was even the term manosphere. Like we all know manosphere. That word didn't even exist. And so I was talking about it and didn't have a word. I was like, there's a bunch of people and they're trying to get our boys to do stuff and it's really bad. And like, I was lucky to get that opportunity in the New York Times. And so yes, to Christopher's credit, I wasn't just some weirdo that he said yes to. I was someone who had been writing about boys for, 10 to 15 years. So it wasn't that crazy.
Um, Christopher, you were talking about boy groups. Can you like maybe break that like down for me? What is a boy group?
Sure. So we have boys groups in middle schools and high schools. I work in San Francisco schools, and essentially, it's a social emotional group, usually with 8 to 12 boys who come together in our wellness center, have a weekly meeting for 45 minutes to an hour. We provide snacks and we have a curriculum, but it's a facilitated group. It's less formal than a classroom where you're studying, and it's a lot about what's going on for the boys who are in the group, and helping them get used to the idea that you can talk about what issues are going on in your life. Other people will be supportive. We try to have facilitators um, be, who are young on the younger side, so um, that they're relatively close in age to the boys, but they have some training and experience. Um, so, and we mostly have boys of color in our groups because that's mostly who's in our schools. So, ideally, we try to match the demographics of the school that we're working in, and have facilitators who, look and have some lived experience that's similar to the boys that they're working with. Um, and just that it's really helpful to just have some adult men in front of these boys who can say, I went through something similar like that. Here's my path. Here's how I kind of dealt with whatever issues came up in my life. And then also here's how I went to college. Here's how I paid for it. Here's um, sort of my path to how I got to where I am now. And one of the messages we try to share is that we actually need men to step up and become teachers and social workers and therapists, um, and that these are, decent paying careers that these boys could go into if they're interested at all or have some um, ability to sort of make space for other people and care for other people. We really try to spread that word and say, this would be a great career for you. I really see you connecting well with the other kids in this group, and I see how you're such a good friend. Like, have you thought about becoming a social worker? Have you thought about becoming a therapist? I think you'd be really good at it.
Yeah.
There's another thing these boys groups do that is really and sort of subtextual in that if you have a facilitator and let's say you have 8 boys and they come from a background where maybe they weren't always talking about their feelings, that facilitator models for them how to create an emotionally safe and supportive environment. So that there is a ripple effect to that because then you've got 8 boys who wouldn't have already known A, how to talk about and process their feelings, but B, how to support another person, especially a guy, talking about your feelings, how to not be like, oh God, why are you such a, whatever, to show up and say, tell me more about that. And of course, I'm not going to tell anyone else, but you need to talk and I'm here for you. Just these little phrases and the ripple effect that goes out when we get 8 or 10 or 25 or whatever boys learning how to show up for each other.
Yeah. I think we kind of like touched upon it, but it took me a long time to like really realize the extent to like the problem that we're having with boys right now. Can you kind of like summarize a little bit like what the state of boyhood is in America right now so we can understand why this is also so important? Because when my husband was talking to me about it, I thought he was exaggerating. I was like, you're just a white man complaining for the sake of complaining. I was
Yeah.
raised in a very feminist household around mostly women. So my job was to help women kind of like rise up. And I didn't realize to what extent by doing that, I was also like bringing men down unconsciously, of course,
I was raised the same way, and I don't think we're bringing men down when we do that. I think men got forgotten, and men should have been lifting other men up. I was the same way. She was raised with a single mom, my grandma, my great aunts, my great grandma. They were all feminists or activists in this space, right? And Christopher's mom and his grandmother were activists in this space. But I don't think that us rising up brought them down. Instead, other men should have been putting a hand down and raising their boys up so that we could all rise together. And Christopher has great data, and I'll be quiet now that I said that. I just want to alleviate the women here from any sort of guilt or weird shame around that.
We've done, as a society, really important work around raising up girls, and we don't want to see any of that go away. I think the programs to say to girls, like, think about a STEM career, and you could be a scientist, you could be an engineer, you could be a mathematician, you could be an astronaut. Like, those have been successful.
Yeah, it's great.
We want them to keep going. We don't want to do anything to put girls down or put them back in their place or anything like that. But what we do, what I want to see is kind of a expansion of the roles that boys feel like they have access to, and largely that's into this kind of role of being a caring person in the world and caring for other people, either in their personal life, in their family life, or in their career. And breaking down what we sometimes talk about as the man box, and this is something that comes up a lot in school, where boys show up at school and they kind of understand pretty quickly, oh, I'm not allowed to wear these colors, or I'm not allowed to be in the choir, or be a dancer, or people make fun of me, or sometimes they'll beat me up. There's sort of these rules about how to act, how to hold your body, what kind of voice you can project, what sports are okay to like and not like, how to talk about girls or women, and all those things are reinforced mostly by other boys. And sometimes by adults.
And with boys that are struggling, we know that their rates of suicide are much higher, of dying by suicide are much higher than girls. Girls do attempt suicide. Boys die from suicide more often. We know that they're dying of drug overdoses more often. We know that there's more reckless behavior and joining criminal activity among boys. So we're talking reckless driving while intoxicated, other sorts of risky behavior that is not so healthy. We also know that they're not going to college. They're not going into professional degrees as often as they used to. And if we were just saying they're not going to college as often as girls, okay, who cares? But it's the fact that they're not achieving to the levels that they could as often as they used to. So it's fine if girls want to be doctors and guys want to be teachers. That's wonderful. That may be a swap from what we've seen since the 90s. That's a wonderful thing, but that's not what we're seeing. What we're seeing is that boys are floundering at every level, and especially boys that are already in marginalized groups, but also middle-class white boys. They're also floundering. And what we want to do is try to intervene before that loneliness of not having that in-group, not having that group at work, that fraternity group, that choir from college, whatever it was that 25 years ago might have connected them to other people. Now would be video games, and they're isolated at home. And what we want to see is boys that know how to connect with other people, that feel good about who they are and don't have all of this shame heaped on them for, like, maybe not having sex with tons of girls, maybe not being a millionaire, maybe not driving a Ferrari. That all of those trappings of the manosphere, that you don't need that to feel good, because boys and young men are struggling. The depression rates, everything. It's not good. We're trying to intervene at an age where parents can really do something hands-on to help.
What are some signs that a boy is shutting down?
So we're really aware of, I think one of the things we haven't talked a lot about yet is the influence of the internet, but that has just really changed the lives of adolescents overall. And with adolescent boys, they're contending with an algorithm. So as soon as they log into social media or into a website that does some tracking, which is almost every website, they start to get ads and messages around masculinity. Even if they don't go searching for those things, they start to get them in their feeds. And we see that boys are looking, turning increasingly to the internet for guidance around what it means to be successful as a man, and finding messages that I think most adults would wouldn't really love. So it's a space where we're saying to parents, like, you have to stay involved even when your kid is kind of shutting the door or
Yeah.
going on their headphones all the time. You have to really push and keep involved with them, probably longer than you expected, into those teen years, maybe into young adulthood, of having regular, ongoing conversations, encouraging critical thinking and media literacy, thinking about, like, why do you think they're sending you these ads? Or we watched
Yeah.
that movie together. What did you think about the way the guy treated the woman in that movie? I want you to know, if you did something like that, here's how I'd feel about it. And really
Yeah.
getting your own values out in front of those boys in a regular way. We like to say it's better to do 61-minute talks than one 60-minute talk. Sometimes adults really get invested, like, oh, I've got to get the perfect lecture down, and we're going to sit down and I'm going to tell them everything I know. Get rid of that idea. Like, just try to have a little bit of connection every day, share things as they come up, um, and really just keep those lines of communication open throughout their teen years.
And that online influence is a good entry point into what some of the signs are, because your kids sometimes, when they're being influenced too much by these unhealthy factors, will start using terms and words that are unfamiliar to you. Now, every kid right now is saying 6, 7. If you have a middle schooler right now, you just went, ugh. And that's normal. It's normal for them to follow trends. It's normal for them to be annoying in that way. It's
Wait,
normal
what's
for us.
6, 7?
It's like the origin is there was some rap song that mentioned it, and somehow it became a thing that it means nothing, Victoria. Like, literally, like, all the 5th graders in our art classroom just are like 6, 7. It's nonsense. They want to put it on. We did peace rocks where they're supposed to put peace signs and messages of love. And all the boys are like, can we do 6, 7? And the art teacher and I were like, no, it means nothing. Think about peace. There's a 6, 7 brings peace. And then they all go, yeah, this is normal adolescent behavior. That's okay. Okay. And there will be something else next week. Don't worry. So that's normal. But the kind of thing where, like, the kid is being influenced by someone who has bad intentions. So your kid might come to you and say something like, oh, you know how women are, you know how girls are. This is a terrible example. Or they might start saying something like terms that are offensive to see how you react. They might use a slur or like, oh, that's so gay or something. And they may feel cocky and confident with it, but they're looking to see how we react. So when that kind of language starts showing up, then you can just be like, where do you hear that? On top of that, when they're really in trouble, we have an extensive list from an adolescent psychologist with lots of experience in our book, Talk to Your Boys. But the basic things to look at is, like, retreating deeper and darker than they have before. Putting in headphones, they all do that, but putting in headphones and not being able to have a conversation at the table without snapping, or getting mad, or really stark changes in appearance, massive weight gain and weight loss, signs that they may be self-harming. Of course, we're looking for cutting, we're looking for bruises, there may be partner violence, signs that they might be using substances. All that sort of typical reckless behavior we can start looking for as early as 11 or 12. Just keep an eye out for it. And then the reaction is not, I know you're watching the stupid manosphere content, or I know you're hanging out with guys that do drugs, or I know you're depressed. It's more like, early and often, what's going on? Like, I had never heard you use the B word before, and I'm curious, that's not okay in my house. Where's that coming from? Like, what's going on? Or, I see that you shaved your head and it looks cool, but I wonder, like, is that a trend? Just keep asking so that if he says, oh, all my friends shave their head and we think it's funny, that's normal. Or if it's more like, I don't know, what's the point? And it's a dark answer, then you can inquire further. And we always recommend parents reach out to a clinical therapist, a counselor, school counselors, free, amazing resources. Just when you have a doubt, like, ask for help. But look for those big changes in personalities for when a kid is really in trouble.
You mentioned friends, and that is an area that definitely terrifies me once my kids are old enough to, like, choose their own friends.
Yeah.
What would you do, or what would you tell a parent to do if they see that their kid is hanging out with some boys that are probably not a great influence in their lives.
Yeah, you've probably seen that we have a whole section of the book about that because it's really big.
Yeah.
We really, one thing to recognize is how valuable friendship is in the lives of young people. So one issue that we have coming up broadly as a society is that a lot of boys and young men say they just don't have any close friends, and actually adult men also are echoing this, that they don't have any close friends. So these are skills that you can teach as an adult, teach to young people, like how do you make friends, how do you evaluate what kind of friend you want to have, and my sense is that a lot of people, once their kid gets a phone, that they sort of expect them to navigate those social avenues themselves, and they're not very good at it at first. They need some practice and some rehearsal, and they might need you to kind of walk you through, like, how do you actually make a social plan with someone else. Um, Sometimes, and then you want to be aware of what kind of friends does your kid have, or what kind of friends are they drawn to, um, and have some communication about that. I usually don't think it's a great idea for people to be like, you absolutely can't be friends with that person, like, because they'll usually sneak around and then maybe be lying to you. So, but it is okay to be like, did you like the way that they treated you? Or I noticed they're bossing you around a lot. Or, um, sometimes people start asking for money, or using their friends in that way. So, having conversations about that. Um, if you can volunteer to be like the driver driving kids around, that is a great way to kind of stay connected and learn what's going on in the lives of their social group without necessarily even having a conversation. You can just listen in. Um, and then a lot of communication happens like during video games with middle school or high school boys. They'll play together where one person's in one house and one person's in another house. Get in that room sometimes and listen to how they're talking to one another, and remind them that, hey, the person on the other end that you just told to go kill yourself, or you just called a retard or something like that, like,
And yes, that does happen. I saw Victoria's face. Yes, the language they use with each other in video games is horrifying. And they don't all, but it's good for them to know, I'm listening. We're here and we're listening.
That person on the other side is a person.
That's a person.
Say that. They might be having a really rough day. I don't like you using language like that. Remind them of the rules around what's okay with you.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, my son and I have this anecdote about, he had this friend that I call Robert. And Robert was your stereotypical teenage dirtbag. He just was like all chasing girls. He had hickeys on his neck. This was in 9th grade. He was always like talking to my kid, like, let's go to this party. Let's go to that party. And everything inside of me wanted to be like, you can't hang out with Robert. Robert sucks. And in reality, I knew I had to give Robert a chance, because if I pushed my son away from him, there could be that magnet effect where he's like, Robert must have something appealing. So instead, I knew Robert was walking home from school. So like Christopher said, I would say, does Robert need a ride? And when I picked up my son, Robert would get in every day. And just like with my own 2 boys, I made them switch who sat in the front and who sat in the back. So sometimes Robert was up front with me. And I learned about Robert. He had a single mom. The dad had moved away to start a second family. This kid just kind of needed someone to talk to. And he liked my son because my son was a good listener. And so I had Robert in the car every day, started taking them to have fast food or whatever after dinner, after school. And this became a really good relationship. Now, mind you, I did not let my son go to Robert's house after school because there wasn't enough supervision. But I gave them something else to do instead, and I was fortunate that I could do that. So I always suggest, before you ban someone from their dirtbag friend, you instead try to invite that kid in and see what's going on. Because I actually ended up loving Robert, and he's doing really well now. They're seniors in high school now.
Oh my God, you're my hero. I'm definitely going to be applying that soon. That's a really good tip. You mentioned porn before, and that's another area of, that makes us all parents very scared. What are the effects of watching porn too early? What is watching porn too early? What age? And what can we actually do about it if we discovered that they are watching porn?
So I I agree. I want to empathize with all parents that nobody wants to have this talk with their kids. It's intimidating and scary, um, and research says most kids will see um, porn online, and it's usually earlier than we expect. So, Common Sense Media's research says around age 12 or 13, most kids have seen porn, either on purpose or by accident. And um, it's important, I think, to remember that adolescents are naturally curious about bodies. Their bodies are going through these big changes where they're changing from little kid bodies to more adult sized bodies, and all the things that happen then can feel mysterious, they can feel overwhelming. So often people are just like, what does a naked woman look like, what does a naked man look like? They might Google things like that. Sometimes people get porn when they're just like, oh, let's see what happens when we type boobs into Google.
Yeah.
And
One of my children, who shall remain nameless, came to me and said, Mom, I went on the tablet and Googled naked people. And that was the beginning of when I had to learn, and he was 10. And I had to start learning all of the stuff Christopher was saying.
So it can be pretty innocent, and it's not necessarily, they can end up on porn sites, just from pretty simple searches. Um, I think what we're concerned about is that it can feel overwhelming if you've never seen a naked person before.
Oh
and
my
then
gosh, imagine.
Yeah.
all of a sudden people see doing very explicit sexual acts with one another. That's a lot for a kid to take in. It might feel scary. It might feel overwhelming. So we
It can
want
be
them,
traumatizing. Kids sometimes really have trauma from seeing it too early.
So if that happens, we want them to feel like, oh, you can talk to an adult about that, and we're not going to be mad at you. We'll help you work through it. We'll help you understand how not to see that again. And that's a helpful role. With older kids, we sometimes do see they're trying to figure out how to have sex, and figure out how different sex acts work. And um, they'll go to porn for that. And porn is just not a very good place to learn about sex and how sex works. Most of the porn that is available to teenagers now is on these tube sites that are short videos where there's no relationship buildup, there's no real plot to this, to it. It's just sexual activity and then it's done. Um, so in a real life situation, if you think about a teenager who might end up in a sexual situation at some point, there's a lot of communication. Ideally, there's negotiation about what do you want to do, what do you not want to do, what are your limits, how do you want to handle pregnancy and STI prevention. Where would we even do this? Like, what's a safe place? Like, there's a lot
and
of
connection.
to go into it.
We want our kids to think about sexual activity as connection, even if your values are something, less conservative than wait until marriage or wait till college or something. We want the kids to be able to think of sex as emotionally connective between people, and they'll never see that in porn that they find online. Never. They're looking mostly at like little tiny videos, like Christopher said, and thus, Christopher has a colleague named Shafia Zaloom who says trying to learn about sex from porn is like trying to learn how to drive from Fast and the Furious. And every kid is like, oh, okay, I get it. So it needs to be not shameful and not, I'll take your tablet away if you ever come to me and tell me you saw something like this. But instead, it's like we need to talk about it because it's made for adults. It's made by adults, and it's not what sex is like. It's a different thing entirely, so that they don't think they're going to learn anything from it and they understand. Like, we also feel it's important to talk to kids about like consent in it. Like, how do you know the person making this video wanted to be on camera? How do you know if they're being paid well? How do you know if they're being protected? How do you know that they really chose this for real? So they can start thinking about, sex is not about consumption and getting, even porn. You have to think about how safe and healthy is this, because those are words we want associated with sex and desire.
And do you think that, for example, if you know that your child is in an age where, okay, he's like 13, 14, he just watched this, you explain to him that that's not how it works, and you need to like focus on like the actual emotion between both of them. Do you provide tools for them to like see what, like, where is that line, like parent, friend?
This is
You know,
so
like,
hard. Yeah.
for how much you
Yeah.
give.
Sure. I mean, I do think either at school or at home, kids deserve information about how sex works, and real sex education. And unfortunately, that is not always happening. So if you're an adult, if you're a parent and you're like, oh, there's no way I can talk about that with my kid, um, if you understand that about yourself, then maybe looking to say, is this happening at school? If it's not happening at school, could I find a weekend class that they could go to? Can I find a good book that I can give them? But we do need to provide some resources. Um, it's not fair to ask teenagers um, to go through their whole teenage years without no information about um,
Yeah.
those big questions, like just factual information, like how does pregnancy work, um, how does birth control work, how do you know when you're ready to have sex? Like these are things that teenagers deserve some space to talk about. Um, they can be really rich places for adults to have conversations with young people, but I know not all adults are up for doing that. So there are
Yeah.
lots of resources to help you.
A phrase that I always like, and my friend and I were just talking about this with her son who's 14, who asked her, he said to her, and this is an amazing thing, I'd like to watch some porn because someday I want to have sex and I don't really understand it. And so she came to me, she said, oh my God, what do I show him? And I said, the first thing we need to do is let him know, A, it's great that he came to you, and B, let him know when you care and are connected with somebody like that physically, and you're kissing and you feel all those feelings and you have a conversation about what you want to do next, you'll know what to do. Yes, you know that this part goes into this part and you know but like, as far as how does this go from this to this, it's okay when you are together to figure that out together. And that can be part of the fun. It can be part of the connection that you're building with that person, is like, we don't really know exactly if this is how it's supposed to go, but let's try it. That's normal sexual experimentation among, adults or teenagers that are near adulthood. And what we do need to teach them is how to know when the other person's ready, how to talk about people's boundaries, how to use the condom or other birth control appropriately and effectively, how to know what to do if something goes wrong, like if a condom breaks. Those are the things they need to know. And my friend and I also brainstormed. He said, I want to see something about like how to know when a girl is ready. And we actually went through and we found clips from Bridgerton. And I was like, I mean, if he really wants to see something, you can say these are actors, but this is more like how it happens, where two people have feelings and they connect and they're kissing, and then there's this and then there's that. And Bridgerton also models consent, where they look at each other and they say, do you want to do this? And you can tell these are actors. This isn't porn, but this was created because it feels real to people who are watching it. And that's probably a closer way to get a visual if you need it. And you also know these actors were paid well and all of those things, that they were comfortable in that situation. So I'm not saying everyone should do that. That's the kind of moms that my friend Jordan and I are, that we just do that kind of stuff. But it's an idea.
Yeah.
There's a
One of the
there's a
things that
website.
sorry.
There's one website that I really like for teenagers called Scarletine.
Yes.
And the creator Heather Carina also has a couple good books for teenagers. So those are places to go if people do have these kind of mechanical questions or how do things work kind of questions. There are places that you can go with information that's really aimed at teenage audience, but that provides them with real information that's truthful and meant for them to see. So Scarletine is one of my top recommendations in that area.
Amazing. One of the things that I loved about your book is that it's just very direct on like how to do things, and like it's very like it's easy to applicate. What's the word?
Yeah.
Like it's like
Yeah,
do
apply.
things right away. And I was very shocked about when you guys were talking about how to use a sentence, like how it works, when it works, and when it doesn't work. when you're trying to like say something to a boy and how they would take it. Do you mind going a little bit into that? Like if I'm talking to my son, what is one sentence that I can say to him that will be taken well? And the other example where it's just like he's going to shut down if I talk to him in that way.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have every chapter we have those. So I'm trying to think of one that will be relatable to the most people. But for instance, just in the way that you knock on the door and go into his room when he is a tween or a teen matters. So instead of barging in and saying, I need to talk to you about what happened at school today, instead we can knock on the door and say, hey, do you have a minute? The simple act of asking, do you have a minute right now or can we talk later? Some parents might feel like that's giving a kid too much power. Listen, you're going to have that talk. You're the parent. The talk is happening. But you give them that sense of respect of like, hey, are you in the middle saying, can we talk? And then giving them a little framework for what it's going to be about. This isn't that important. It's just about Thanksgiving. Or this is really important. I got a call from the principal. It's going to be, maybe 10, 15 minutes. We really need to sit down and talk about it. This is serious. So they know what they're getting into. If they're in the middle of a homework assignment or some other thing, then they can say to you, I need 5 minutes or whatever. That starts it out with collaboration rather than being an authoritarian kind of dictator. In other ways, one of the hardest things that parents that we've worked with and talked to one of the hardest things for them is when the kid is angry. So if the kid comes to you, we have a pizza example in the book where the kid's like so angry. It's like, Dad, this pizza sucks. I hate this pizza. Why do you keep getting this pizza? It's disgusting. And that is how a lot of teenagers might react, boys and girls. And your instinct might be to like, don't talk to me that way. That's disrespectful. That's your pizza. You eat it. That's how most of us were raised, right? Instead, to be able to go, whew, that is disrespectful language. I'm having a hard time with it right now. I'm really angry, but I want to talk to you about this. So let's give it a few minutes. And then when you're able to come back, you can be like, I want to understand about what's going on with this pizza and what you were feeling. Okay. So now that we're both calm, what's going on? And then maybe there is more to it. The example in the book, the boy was upset about the pizza because he kept telling the dad, I don't like this pizza. And the dad kept buying it. What it was at the core of that a calm conversation got to was that the kid felt like he wasn't cared for and that he wasn't being heard. So it wasn't a tantrum over cheap pizza. It was, Dad, you are not hearing me. And that is hurting my feelings. It's like they may not say it that way. So making a space to get to the core issue and then saying, I'm hearing that you felt like I wasn't listening and like I don't care. And it's not that at all. And then you can say, I'm so busy. I forgot and I'm really sorry. Or this is the pizza that we can afford. Let's try out a couple others that are in that price range because that one you like is twice as expensive. Like be honest and be collaborative. And you're much more likely to diffuse those tantrums or those meltdowns quickly if you are able to do that.
Is there a specific time that you should be talking to your kids, like before bedtime? Is it in the car? Is it while you're walking? What do you guys recommend?
Well, there's some really interesting research that we included in the book about physical movement and how doing something rhythmic, like bouncing a ball back and forth, walking at a similar pace, doing an activity like that together helps to keep cortisol levels down, which is when people feel stressed out, those levels rise. And it's really hard to have a conversation when you're feeling stressed or angry or anxious. So I think it's, some of those feel like traditional things that you might do with a boy, like go out and play catch or bounce a ball back and forth. But there's some science behind like, oh, that's actually a good tool for keeping a conversation rhythm going. And, if you're talking while you're bouncing a ball back and forth, it sort of also, I think, contributes to this pattern of like, oh, I said something, now you say something back. And you're sort of sharing back and forth. So that's one way to go. A lot of people have success with talking in the car because it's a break from things and you're facing forward. You're not looking directly at one another.
But some kids hate it. Mind you, some kids feel trapped. And a lot of parents hear that. And then the kid gets into school after a long day in 9th grade. And you're like, I need to talk to you about condoms. And the kid is like, get me out of this car. So you do have to like read your kid. Make sure that that is working for them. And if your kid's not sporty, one of my kids is not sporty. One is really sporty. Throwing a ball is perfect for him. For the other one, strumming a guitar or taking a hike. Those things for him really did it. Or working on, like, him and his dad were building something for his brother. And that was where they got into their deepest conversation. So they don't have to be a ball works, but something where you don't have to just be staring in each other's eyes so intensely.
And then
What
as
do
far
you
as
do if
time,
you have sorry.
as far as timing, I think sometimes around the dinner table, like if you're eating all together, that works for some folks. But a lot of kids really don't get talkative until they have free choice about what they're doing with their time, which is most often at the end of the day. So we hear from so many parents that, oh, my kid wouldn't talk to me all day, and I kept trying to talk to them, and finally, um, I was saying goodnight to them, and they're in bed, and it's late, and all of a sudden they want to talk, and they want to talk a lot. So it can feel surprising or even annoying to parents when they're like, "Oh, I've got a bunch of stuff to do, and it's the end of the day. Now you want to talk?" But
Yeah, we just
I
had this last
encourage
night
people. Yeah,
with we were watching The Diplomat, and we were so chill under a blanket on the couch, 9 p.m. And down comes one of our boys, sits down and is like, I've got the problem. And we're both like, ugh. But I paused The Diplomat and we were there for the problem, because 9 p.m., I swear, maybe it's just my boys, but I think it's a lot of them. It's like the brain turns on and they're like, gotta connect. So we gotta show up for them when they have that feeling.
What do you do if you have like a sassy kid and he is always responding with like sarcasm or humor and not taking you seriously?
you can
Because I
play
have
with
a
that a little.
3-year-old
You
and
can
he's
play with
already
that a
like
little
that.
bit. Yeah.
I was that kid.
So connecting around humor, you can play with that a little bit, and then I actually one of the things that I love to do is to look to actually watch comedy with a kid and talk about, like, why is this person funny and why is this person not funny, or sometimes maybe you don't like a particular comedian because they're making fun of other people. So I think for a funny kid, actually, they need to learn that. It's like, what's the difference between sort of sometimes people talk about it as punching up versus punching down. Like, punching down is when you're making fun of people who have less power than you. So you're making fun of people because of their looks, or you're making fun of your classmates in kind of a way that feels like bullying. Um, and it is, if a kid's trying to be funny in that way, we've got to work with them on that. But
Yeah.
um,
If they're being sassy to you, and sassy is probably not a good word for a teenage boy, but if they have attitude like that, I think for me, what I would try first is to say, I think you're being sarcastic, and for my brain, that does not work as well. And if you want to say something, I do better with like direct. Like, I think sarcasm is funny, but it feels like there's something else there that we can talk about. Or even just like, dude, I want you, that's like hurting my feelings. Like the way you're talking right now is like, it's hurting my feelings. I've definitely said that to kids, because they may talk to their friends like that, but it's not going to work with you. And also, they might not like it when their friends do it, or their friends might not like it. So letting them know, dude, this is bumming me out. It makes me like really upset, and just being honest about how it feels. Let's talk about this for real. Like, what's behind this?
Yeah. In your book, you include like 16 conversations about how to like talk to your kids. What would you say are the top 3 most important ones, or the top 3 ones that you would start with?
well, we start out the book with talking about communication, um, and I think you just really need those communication skills when we're thinking about these boys that we're raising right now are going to be people's neighbors, husbands, partners, coworkers in the future. And you think about, how do you want them to be with all those other people in their lives? They've got to learn good communication skills and sort of spatial awareness skills of, like, you walk into a space and what is sort of reading the room, which is kind of a communication skill and kind of a attentive skill of, like, oh, how is this the right place to start popping off with jokes, or is this a more serious spot? Is there work that needs to be done in this? Like, is there a way that I could pitch in and be helpful here? Like, those are that's where I would start, is with those communication and attention skills. What do you
Yeah.
think, Joanna?
I think talking about Man, I think that this is so hard because they're all so important to me. But like, I would say we always want people to start with the communication chapter because we can learn from it as adults. And then we model that for our kids as well as teach it to our kids. But then I would say probably the social media and tech. The screens chapter is really important because if you're getting this and your kid is 10, you already need to have those conversations, even if it's just about Minecraft. And then probably sex. I think that's really important, sex and pornography. I would call those my top three. I think that the reason we built the book the way we did is so that parents could pick up the book and just go to the chapter they need. Like your sons right now, Victoria, are pretty young. So maybe the screen time one was the first one that you went to because you're talking about tablet time and whatever. Whereas in 5 years, you're going to need to go read that sex one, or you need to go read the racism one or whatever it is as they come up. So you can read it out of order. But definitely, we like the communication one. People have told us that it helps them in their marriage. It could also be called talk to your husbands, because a lot of the skills come from marriage therapists and couples experts. They have the best communication skills. So I would start there.
What's the one question you think every parent should be asking their kid weekly?
Well, a big concern for
Good
me is
question.
around, I'm concerned about kids spending time with technology because of what they see, and what comes in their feeds. But I'm just as concerned about how much in-person time that is replacing in their lives. So, um, continuing to say like, who can we make a plan where you're getting together with people in real life this week, or like sort of collaborating on that, and it might mean meeting up with another family. It might mean you're driving back and forth some kids, but um, figuring out how can we have you spend some time in real life with other people um, regularly. That we've seen there's actually studies on the amount of time that kids spend hanging out with one another, and it's gone down tremendously. And we've seen rates of teenagers who say that they're dating someone, or that they're going on dates, has also gone down a lot. And I just think those skills that you get from spending time with other teenagers, other young people in real life, um, are crucial for developing into full human beings and being good adults. So asking about that would be where I'd start.
I'm going to do like a little lighting round of questions because I know that we're like starting to like run out of time. What is the one thing that parents should stop saying to their sons?
I'll answer this one. Man up or act like a man.
What is one thing they should be saying to their sons?
Christopher.
You can talk to me about anything.
What is one cultural message around masculinity you'll rewrite?
Oh, that men shouldn't and don't cry.
What is the hardest conversation you've ever had with a boy?
Around suicide and really wanting to, like just saying, we want you here, and that you're important, that you're loved, and I'd be so sad if you were gone.
Okay, this is for both of you. Finish the sentence. A good man is
knows his own ethic, knows his own, is a guy who knows what's right and is strong enough to act on it.
And I would say dependable and pitches in without expecting a trophy.
okay.
Good one.
For parents that are listening, like, and they just kind of like want to start tonight and kind of rewrite their story, what is the very first question they should be asking their sons tonight before they go to bed?
What I would ask my son before he goes to bed, is there anything that you want to talk about that you feel like maybe you can't tell me?
What is the one thing that you guys hope changes around culturally, around masculinity after writing this book?
I want people to really embrace their teenage sons and the boys in their life, and celebrate them and enjoy them. I think people sometimes get scared of teenage boys, and I want to sort of say, like, this could be actually an amazing time for you as an adult connecting with the teenager in your life. So here's some tools to help you do that, and to have people just feel closer to the boys and young men in their lives.
Yeah, I like that.
That's a really good one. Do you think that we're just constantly saying that we want men to change and we want like emotionally available men, or do you think that we're just saying that as a society?
Oh, I have a lot of feelings on this. I need to think about how to say it really short. I think we want emotionally available men, but we also want them to be emotionally intelligent. So we can't just be saying to men, we want to see you cry. We want to see your soft side. And then not accepting when they show it to us, or have them react by crying and needing us and treating us like therapists. Like, being emotionally intelligent means knowing how to take care of your stuff, who to turn to when you need help, and not just dumping it on other people.
Okay. If there's one takeaway you hope that like everyone takes from this book, what do you guys want it to be? That's for both of you.
So the book is called Talk to Your Boys, and that's really the message that we're trying to bring to the world, is that a lot of boys feel pretty alone and feel like no one's paying attention to them, or that they can't be real with their feelings. And that is the message that I want people to walk away from this book, is that we need to be fully engaging boys and young men in our lives, and embracing them for who they are, and letting them be their full selves.
Thank you. Thank you both so much for, first of all, for writing the book, because I know how much time and effort and energy goes into not only writing it, then doing everything that you guys have to do in order to bring it into the world. It's been such a life-changing book for me, and I'm sure it will be for everyone that reads this book. I will be linking the book on the Substack for everyone to like go get their copy. Thank you so much, both of you, for making the time and rescheduling last week. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for having us.
And both Joanna and I both also have Substacks. If people are interested in this work, you're welcome to follow us here too. And we really appreciate the time for everybody who joined in, and for you, Victoria, for making the space for this conversation.
And here's the cover.
The things, yeah. Get your book, everyone.
It's backwards on here.
All right. Have a great day. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.